Hello! So I'm having a fun day and I keep getting copied into this stuff, so I just thought I'd do a quick little video. Trident failed. No. I do love one of these titles. New York Times, UK's Trident nuclear missile fails another test. I'm sorry, it's an Anglo-American program with American primary lead, so if the Trident D5 missile is failing, it's not UK Trident, it's Trident nuclear missile because it's a joint program and we pull the missiles and we pull the testing data. But, yeah, missile fails test for second time in 8 years. There have been roughly 190 missiles tested, roughly a dozen or so over the years have had issues. And probably a dozen more or so probably have had issues at certain points. And yeah, extremely complicated system has failures in testing. It's annoying. There are people who go, oh, this ruins deterrence. Well, I'm sorry, it's the risk you run when you test things properly. If you do a test where everything's rigged for it to perfectly work every time, that's supposedly great for deterrence, but you're never really sure if the stuff will actually work. This occasion, the submarine did all it was supposed to do, as far as all the reports that have been published have suggested, and pretty much everything I've heard have suggested. So yeah, the submarine works as planned. The missile issues happened. Oh great. Well, it's an extremely complicated system, as I've said before, but I'll say it again. And it crashed. Do people stop using SpaceX when they have testing and an issue goes wrong? Nope, they're still using it. In fact, it's probably going to be one of the most effective, efficient delivery systems we have going in the world currently. Because let's be honest, all the other options aren't really working and aren't certainly not producing the same volume of output as the SpaceX are at the moment. Okay, so if having testing failures doesn't ruin SpaceX's credibility, why would an occasional testing failure ruin the nuclear deterrence in Britain's or America's ability to deter? Nope, it doesn't. See, the thing is, it's being tested. It's being reported. The one thing I am happy about this is they haven't covered it up. You see, here is the thing. If they'd attempted to cover it up, I'd be really worried right now. If I was hearing this and seeing nothing going on in newspapers, nothing in the public, then I would be absolutely petrified of the quality of the issues going on. But they're not. They've not. It's come out. And I realise there are going to be people below who are, and probably in comments, who find this in various YouTube searches, etc., who are going to be very upset and going to be saying it's terrible, it's completely embarrassing for the UK. It's not. There are lots of things which are embarrassing the UK in defence terms at the moment. There's the fact that Australia has actually put together a vaguely comprehensive plan and is actually planning on ending up with a larger fleet than the British have. When the British have the larger economy, the larger population, the larger industrial and infrastructure base, and yet keep complaining about how much all these things cost. Largely that's because of our own stupid decisions and how we procure things, not because of their real expenses. That's embarrassing. There are many things other than that which are embarrassing about UK defence and procurement. There's the fact that the army is being kept quite so small when probably if you're looking at transitioning, and we are in an era of transition, you probably should actually be recruiting more people and have a larger number, because what you need is the people who are going to keep the legacy systems working while that's viable, as well as integrating the new systems, because there's going to be a transition period where the new systems really aren't up to snuff and really aren't at the level you want to use them, and the old systems still have to be kept going, but instead what's often happening is the forces are being forced to choose between trying to do a very rapid implementation of a new system, which is really expensive and high risk, or keep running an old system, which is also really expensive and high risk to try and keep it viable. All these things, but that's cheaper than just actually recruiting and paying the forces personnel enough. I'd say the housing situation for the UK Armed Forces, that is a national embarrassment. That is frankly terrible. The recruitment system we could get into. All these things are issues. But no. And you have to remember that if even the worst thing the Guardian can do with its title is say Trident missile test failure raises questions about UK's nuclear deterrent, when the Guardian is practically the most anti-nuclear deterrent of any of the British papers and British media, that tells you there's not a massive issue going on here. It's an annoying thing. And there are issues. There are issues with Britain's deterrence. I would say the fact is that we are too reliant on it. I would say we have stripped the conventional deterrence and conventional forces budget so much that we are overwhelmingly reliant on the status the nuclear deterrent brings us, and that is a very, very dangerous position to be in. But people who go, well, let's cut the nuclear deterrence and then we will invest the rest in the other, I don't think that's going to happen. I have no faith that the politicians would actually invest in the rest of the conventional deterrence. I also do not think cutting nuclear weapons is a sensible approach. Because currently, in NATO and in European terms, and in Commonwealth nations terms, the unifying power there is Britain. And Britain and France have no nuclear deterrence. And it means that, frankly, even the largest powers have to be respectful. There are boundaries. And that's good for deterrence. That's good for peace. Believe it or not, when you can set boundaries with very powerful people and tell them, no, you can't use your power too much, because if you try and use your power here, it's going to run into our power. We might not be as powerful as you, but we're powerful enough to stop you. That's good. That means people have to negotiate. There is often an idea put out there with nuclear deterrence, you should unilaterally disarm, as that's going to encourage other people to do it. No, because let's be honest, there are lots of powers in this world who are entirely resting on their nuclear power, their nuclear weaponry, for their entire status. Without it, they are nothing. Without it, their country would crumble. We can all work out who those powers could be. And we can work out the circumstances and chain events which would likely lead to that. So they are not going to get rid of theirs. So yeah. Life happens. A Trident missile fails. And that's not good. But every time something fails in testing, every time you have run a test and things don't go right, you learn stuff. You learn more from a failure than you do from a success. Possibly, from watching a failure, you might actually be able to drum into politicians that the salesmen who tell them that these weapon systems are going to work 100% the whole time and always be perfect are not right. Because those are the same salesmen who the Treasury in the UK sided with to believe that having only 2 ships would guarantee the Royal Navy a constant carrier availability. And the reality is, there are gaps. Now, those gaps are kept small. Let's be honest, we just did an amazing feat with the Royal Navy. HMS Prince of Wales was 30 days from going to sea. The problem comes up with HMS Queen Elizabeth. That should be fixed, because honestly, you want to fix that as soon as you can while there's peace, because when there's war, you won't get a chance, and that can cause lives to be lost. So you fix the problem in the engines now. You fix the problem with the shafts, with the propellers now. Whatever the problems are. If there are major problems in the power supply system, engine system, its propulsion system, all those things, you fix them right away when you have the opportunity to. You don't wait. And from being rather 30 days away to going to sea, 8 days, including waiting for the tide, HMS Prince of Wales is at sea. 8 days. They cut 22 days, 27 days if the tide hadn't been against them, off that. 23 days, I mean. That's friggin' amazing. That's a height of professionalism, especially when you consider that we've just been through a gap in naval aviation, a gap in carrier projection, because someone in 2010 had a bright idea. And before anyone starts blaming the 2010 people for the bright idea about 2 carriers replacing 5 flight decks, 2 flight decks replacing 5, because we had Ocean, Argus, Invincible, Illustrious, and Ark Royal. We had 5, and they replaced it with 2. Queen Elizabeth and Prince of Wales. And whilst Argus is still popping around, let's be honest, she's got other duties on her plate at the moment. Once you do that, you've got problems, you've got limitations. This is what's happened to the UK. We often talk about sea blindness, but honestly we have defence and security blindness. It isn't happening every day in front of us, so we forget it. And then when something big blows up, there's always questions of, why haven't we got more? Well, I will tell you this, because when we have defence debates at election times, both sides, all people involved, all the politicians, are talking hot air. They're never held to it. They make promises about this, that, and the other. They're not held to them. The public don't hold them to them. And whenever there is problems with the Ministry of Defence's budgeting, people are going, there's a huge gap in the Ministry of Defence budget between what they're supposed to pay, what they've been committed to, and what they're being allocated in budget. It's always the Ministry of Defence's fault. And I sit there and go, but it's the government which sign up to the criteria that the Ministry of Defence has to fund. And it's the government that sets the Ministry of Defence's budget. So is it the Ministry of Defence's fault, as in the ministry, or is it the government? Because ministers don't go rogue and sign spending documents without the Treasury and Cabinet signing off. They don't do that. So that's been signed off by the government. That's been signed off by the Treasury. And then it's the Treasury and the government who sign off the budget. So it's kind of like this. You turning around with your budget and going, I'm going to spend this much money on buying a new car because my car is breaking down and 40 years old. Oh, cute, sensible. I'm going to spend this much, sign up to buy that car, but I'm only going to spend this much money. Whereas the difference is with you, if you do that, and if you go into the dealership and you go, I'm going to give you this much money for that brand new car, they'll laugh at you and tell you to bog off. In government defence practice terms, they go, oh no, we'll extend the contract, or we'll do like we did with the aircraft carriers. Famously, the budget gets quoted to me quite regularly, where we are going to buy 2, but we're going to pay the amount we would pay for 3.5 aircraft carriers to extend the build as long as we can. Or we're going to do what we did with the destroyers, the Type 45s. Famously, we sign a program which is building 12 of them. We pay for research as if we're paying for building 12 of them, and then we actually build 6. And so they come out as billion-pound destroyers, when actually they do not cost £1 billion to build. And to build the next 6 would have probably cost us probably 2.4 billion. So it would have been 12 for 8.4 billion, which would have been, let's be honest, £700 million destroyers. Still expensive, but not the £1 billion destroyers. And it's the same with when you look at Ajax, or you look at any big program of defence spending. The amount we are buying, the cost of what we're actually buying, versus the amount that's actually being spent. Not on the training, which is necessary, not on the spare parts, which you need. Not on all the other accoutrements, which are needed to make it actually viable. You know, the trailers, so that the vehicles can be towed around on the roads far more quickly without wearing out their engines and ruining our roads than they could by themselves. And all sorts of things like that, which you need to do. The actual money being spent is often because we have to make the programs fit these timelines, which fit political or arbitrary treasury decisions about when it's best. And those programs keep mucking around them, keep changing the decisions every 5 minutes, are what adds to the cost. So yes, going back to Trident, which we started as, it's annoying when something fails its test. But it's better it fails its test now than it fails when we need it. And the important thing is to do the correct testing, and do that testing. So, Hopefully that answers all the comments which have been turning up on my channel and on Twitter all day. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed.